My question to you all is, how have you seen your teams evolve in the way they work over the last 5 years? It's been a period of a lot of change.
My role's changed itself in the last 5 years, but I think one of the general changes I've seen is you've gone away from having a team that's based in one physical location working 9 to 5 to people who are spread all over Europe in my case, all over the world in many cases, and working different times and working more flexibly.
I mean, banks are used to having people in different territories and working different kinds of shifts. Have you seen similar changes or not, Paul?
Yeah, I think that it's a combination. So on one side, we're seeing more flexible workplace, so people can work today from anywhere in the world, no? Because it's all more supported by technology, and especially there are more platforms to collaborate and work in a much more flexible way, so you don't need to be physically somewhere to interact with other people. On the other side, for us, it's also very critical to become closer to the customer, and there are lots of technologies today that allow you to understand better what customers want and how you can design better for customers. No? So I think that for me, thinking about the future of the workplace is also thinking about how you work around the customer and how you think about what are the things that will be changing for your customer experience.
You make a very good point about the tools that enable these kinds of changes, and we will flesh that out a bit more during the discussion. At Tata Steel, have you seen the workforce change the way they work over the last few years?
Of course, we've seen lots of changes like everybody else, but fundamentally with steel, it's kind of technically and physically intensive, and so the people come to the plant. It's extremely capital intensive. So you can't work from home and make steel. That's a bit of a challenge. Yeah? So we haven't seen that change as dramatically as perhaps other industries, and often it's quite challenging when you're kind of bringing people into the organisation. If they have an expectation of flexible working, etc., then that's not going to be the case for everything. Of course, within a white collar context, we've seen the same sort of changes as everybody else. When we made just skip onto the tool for a second. When we recently changed our Skype for Business capability, we started that as a trial in 2013, I think. And by the time we finished the trial, I think we had about 4,500 users on a test pilot server. So it grew without any promotion whatsoever. So people, if you have the right tool, people will collaborate and it will help them to work flexibly.
Do you agree, Lauren?
Yeah, absolutely. And as we see, so I work with lots of organisations. I'm in a small company, but I work with lots of organisations and seeing lots of different trends. But obviously we're seeing younger people coming to organisations demanding different experience, so a much more flexible way of working. In fact, we were discussing earlier about how younger people are sort of thinking about the impact on climate change on their part of the organisation and the implications that's having for sort of technology, which is really interesting. But I think one of the interesting trends that I'd like to highlight is where organisations, technology organisations, are dispersing into the business, either formally or informally. And the most extreme example I've seen recently is actually organisations reshaping them in agile fashion entirely, and the technology people being dispersed into agile teams within organisations. And I found that fascinating as a new thing, a new trend.
Anyone else here? I mean, I saw you nodding when Laura was talking about the agile.
One of the pieces of the transformation that Tata Steel is currently undergoing is about the transformation of the workplace, etc., and the adoption of agile techniques that we've seen in IT. Can we roll them and use those techniques across other areas within our customer account teams, within our engineering teams, within our manufacturing teams, etc.? And that model will work so far, maybe not all the way for everything, but if you look at the need you mentioned earlier about getting that customer centricity and close to the customer. So for us, we've been looking at customer teams who can make all the decisions we need for the customer within a marketing context, within a delivery context, within a billing context, etc., and have that within one team who can make their own decisions about the customer rather than being in kind of functional silos. So that's a very live thing for us right now.
I think it's a very interesting point. I think one of the things where this kind of thing goes wrong is if a company decides we want to work in a more flexible way, we want to spend less money flying people around, so we're going to implement a corporate-wide VC solution, video conferencing solution. And it's given to the technology teams, and they decide on a solution and then roll it out. But they've missed the most important step, which is finding out what their users need. And if you're a legal firm, you should be really talking to the lawyers and what do they need from a collaboration platform? What do they need from the tools, the technology tools we're giving them? And you spend more time on that and less time designing the system, and then choose the system that actually matches what your users need. In most companies, the technologists aren't the users, they're the facilitators.